What happens when a man drunk on power meets someone who doesn't need to raise his voice to command respect? Inside a quiet courtroom, the air feels heavy, thick with whispers, ego, and irony. A uniformed officer, recently suspended, walks in with an arrogant grin. His boots click sharply against the floor, echoing like small bursts of pride. He's been here before, but today feels different, because sitting just a few feet away is the man he once mocked. The man he called boy on the side of the road. The man he didn't know was a U.S. Army general. The cop smirks again. He thinks this is all a joke. He nudges his lawyer, muttering under his breath, "Rank doesn't matter here." The people around him chuckle softly. The judge hides a frown behind her glasses. But the general? He doesn't move. His hands rest calmly on the table. His shoulders straight, medals gleaming under the dull courtroom lights. He doesn't need anger. He doesn't need revenge. He just needs one moment. One call. Because when he lifts that phone and dials a number known only to a few, the entire room will remember who he really is. And in that instant, laughter will die, silence will spread, and a man who once laughed at power will finally kneel before it. This isn't just a trial. It's a lesson in respect. The morning begins with a chill that doesn't belong to the weather. It belongs to the day itself. Outside, the courthouse stands tall and silent, its stone pillars aged by 1,000 forgotten cases. The sun struggles through the clouds, casting a pale gold hue over the city. The kind of light that feels neither warm nor cold, just uncertain. Cars move slowly on the wet street, their reflections rippling through shallow puddles. There's something uneasy in the air, the kind of tension that lingers before truth walks in. Inside, the courtroom is hushed. The echo of footsteps seems louder than it should be. Every chair creak, every paper shuffle, carries weight. The walls, lined with faded portraits of judges past, seem to watch the room with silent judgment. The fluorescent lights buzz faintly overhead, humming like a nervous thought. The spectators whisper among themselves, their voices barely rising above breath. Some came out of curiosity, others for justice, but all feel that unspoken electricity in the air. Something is about to happen, though no one can tell what, or to whom. At the far end of the room, the American flag stands proud, its colors subdued under the artificial light. The air smells faintly of polished wood and cold coffee. The cop sits with a casual slouch, his smirk sharp, his confidence unshaken. Across from him, the U.S. Army general sits still, composed, a monument of calm in a room of tension. His uniform catches the light, each medal a silent story of courage earned in places far harsher than this courtroom. The judge hasn't arrived yet, but the weight of the moment already has. Even the ticking clock on the wall seems hesitant, as if time itself is holding its breath. Outside, thunder rolls faintly in the distance, low and slow, not a storm yet, but a warning. Because this courtroom is about to become more than a place of law. It's about to become a stage, where pride will fall, respect will rise, and one man's silence will speak louder than another's laughter ever could. He enters quietly, no fanfare, no grand announcement. Just the soft rhythm of polished shoes crossing the courtroom floor. General Marcus Ellison. A man carved from discipline and silence. His posture tells his story, straight back, steady eyes, not a single wasted motion. The silver edges of his uniform catch the morning light, his medals aligned with surgical precision. Every thread seems to hold a memory, every crease, a chapter written in sacrifice. But it's not the uniform that commands the room. It's the aura. The quiet authority that doesn't demand attention, it earns it. As he takes his seat, a few heads turn, not out of curiosity, but instinct. The kind of respect that soldiers feel when they see someone who's carried the weight of command for too long. His gaze is steady, unblinking, the calm before every storm he's ever survived. Across from him sits Officer Raymond Doyle, once confident, now restless beneath the very silence he helped create. His badge may have been turned in, but his ego still shines like brass. He leans back, arms crossed, tapping his finger against the table, a rhythm that screams defiance. He doesn't believe in rank, not here. He believes in luck, charm, and the illusion of power. His smirk, faint but deliberate, lingers as he glances toward the general. The same smirk he wore the night he pulled him over, that night when laughter became his weapon. But now, something about the general's stillness unsettles him. The courtroom suddenly feels smaller. Beside the general sits Captain Elena Ruiz, young, sharp, and loyal to her core. She doesn't speak unless spoken to, but her eyes miss nothing. Every pen click, every whisper, every nervous breath from the cop's side. She logs it all like a silent observer of justice. And then there's the judge, Margaret Hensley. Known for her composure, feared for her fairness. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. Her presence alone draws order out of chaos. Today, even she seems to sense that this isn't a routine case. This is something heavier. Something that will test the line between power and respect. The bailiff announces her arrival, and the courtroom rises. The cop stands slowly, reluctantly. The general stands too, calm, deliberate. Their eyes meet, not as enemies, but as opposites in the same story. In that silence, that split second before words fill the air, the hierarchy becomes clear. One man has authority. The other just wore it. The courtroom settles as the judge takes her seat. Papers rustle. A throat clears. The stillness returns, heavier this time. Like the air itself knows what's about to unfold. Judge Hensley adjusts her glasses, scanning the documents before her. We are here to review the conduct of Officer Raymond Doyle in connection with an unlawful stop and verbal harassment of a U.S. Army officer in uniform. She begins, her tone steady, impartial. Doyle shifts in his chair, leaning back with forced ease. He says, a faint chuckle escaping. It was just a misunderstanding. I didn't know who he was. The words hang there, light in tone, but heavy in meaning. Across from him, General Ellison doesn't react. No flinch, no glare. He just sits, shoulders squared, eyes locked forward. His silence feels like a mirror, forcing everyone to look at their own discomfort. The judge looks up. You're telling this court you didn't recognize his rank? Doyle shrugs, a smirk tugging at his lip. Didn't seem important at the time. A murmur ripples through the room. Elena Ruiz's jaw tightens. Even the stenographer pauses for half a second before resuming. The judge leans back. Not important, to address a decorated U.S. Army general with basic respect. Doyle crosses his arms. With all due respect, Your Honor, it was dark. I thought he stops. He was about to say something else. Something that would have burned through the thin fabric of restraint holding this courtroom together. The general finally moves. Slowly. He takes off his hat, placing it gently on the table. The sound of fabric meeting wood is soft, but it cuts through the room like a blade. Your Honor, he says calmly, his voice deep but measured. This isn't about who I am. It's about what he saw when he looked at me. The words freeze the air. The courtroom falls silent again, every breath held hostage. Even Doyle stops fidgeting. His smirk falters. The general continues, each word deliberate. That night, he didn't see a man in uniform. He saw what his bias allowed him to see. And that, Your Honor, is why I'm here, not for apology, but accountability. Judge Hensley nods slowly. Proceed, General. Ellison reaches into his jacket pocket, pulls out his phone. Calmly. The movement alone sends a quiet ripple of unease across the room. Doyle shifts, unsure. The general scrolls for a moment, then looks up. One call, he says softly, almost to himself. That's all it would have taken. But I didn't make it then. Now, for the first time, he does. He presses the call button. The sound of the first ring echoes in the silence. Low, steady, inevitable. Somewhere, deep within the building, a door opens. Footsteps approach. Slow, heavy, commanding. And suddenly, Doyle's smirk disappears completely. Because the real authority has just entered the room. The sound of boots echoes before anyone even sees who they belong to. Heavy, synchronized steps, precise, unhurried, the kind only those trained in respect know how to make. The door opens slowly, and two uniformed officers of the military police step in. Their faces are stoic, unreadable. The courtroom turns to watch them, confusion flickering through the crowd. General Ellison doesn't rise. He doesn't need to. His silence commands more presence than a shout ever could. The judge glances up, uncertain. General Ellison, what is this? He doesn't look at her. His gaze stays fixed on Doyle, whose confidence is evaporating by the second. Just a courtesy call, Your Honor, he says evenly. To make sure this court understands that the man seated before you isn't simply a complainant, but a commander in service to this country. The military police stop behind him, not intrusive, not dramatic, just there. Their posture alone rewrites the hierarchy of the room. Doyle's smirk is gone now. He looks between them and the general, his voice trembling ever so slightly. This isn't necessary. I already said I didn't mean any. Ellison interrupts, quietly. You meant it enough to laugh. The simplicity of that line hits harder than any insult. Doyle's throat tightens. The laughter that once filled the night now echoes in memory, hollow, ugly. Ellison leans forward slightly. Do you remember what you said that night, Officer Doyle? On that dark road. The cop swallows. His voice comes out barely steady. I was doing my job. You were enjoying your job, Ellison corrects softly. There's a difference. The courtroom holds its breath. He continues, his tone measured, each word deliberate, unhurried. You pulled me over for driving a car you didn't think a man like me should own. You didn't see my rank, or my years of service, or the flag on my shoulder. You saw your reflection of fear, and you disguised it as authority. The judge doesn't interrupt. Even she senses that this isn't testimony anymore, it's truth unraveling. Doyle tries to regain composure. Look, I didn't. Ellison raises a hand, and the words die in Doyle's throat. You didn't think, the general says, finishing his sentence for him. That's exactly the problem. Silence again. But this silence feels different, heavier, cleaner. Like truth itself has weight. Ellison reaches into his pocket again. This time, not for his phone, but for a small, folded piece of paper. This, he says, unfolding it carefully, is the citation I received last year from the Department of Defense for overseeing an operation that saved 12 civilians overseas. He places it gently on the table between them. And this, he adds, sliding another paper beside it, is your record. Complaints filed against you by 7 drivers, all dismissed. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't accuse. He simply lays the facts bare, like evidence placed before conscience. The judge leans forward, eyes narrowing. Doyle's face reddens. His breathing quickens. You can't just. I'm not here to ruin you, Officer Doyle, Ellison says, calm as steel. I'm here to remind you what the badge was meant to represent. Service. Integrity. Not ego. The words don't sting, they sink. Doyle looks down at the table. His reflection stares back from the polished surface, and for the first time, he doesn't like what he sees. The laughter that once defined him now feels like shame echoing in his own ears. Ellison stands. The room instinctively rises with him. Even the judge doesn't stop the gesture. The military police remain at ease, silent witnesses to a moral correction happening without orders. The general straightens his jacket. Power isn't control, he says quietly, looking directly at Doyle. It's responsibility. The day you forget that, you don't serve the badge. You betray it. For a long moment, no one speaks. Even the clock seems to hold still. Then the judge clears her throat softly. Officer Doyle, she says, voice firm but calm. You may not be under arrest, but you are under reflection. And I suggest you begin today. The words land like a gavel strike. Ellison nods politely to her, then to the court. He gathers his hat, placing it under his arm, and turns toward the exit. Every step he takes carries the quiet gravity of a man who never needed revenge, only justice done the right way. As he passes Doyle's table, he stops just for a heartbeat. Looks down. Next time you see someone in uniform, he says softly, look at the person, not the color. Then he walks away. The courtroom remains silent long after he's gone. For the first time, Doyle doesn't laugh. He just sits there, alone, small, and finally aware that respect was never something to demand, only something to deserve. The echo of the general's footsteps fades down the corridor, but the weight of his words stays behind, suspended in the still air like smoke that refuses to clear. Officer Doyle remains seated, staring at the space where the general once stood. The courtroom is empty now. The spectators have gone silent, the chatter has died, and even the judge's voice has softened into distant memory. Only the hum of the ceiling fan breaks the quiet, a reminder that time is still moving, even if he isn't. For the first time, Doyle doesn't feel like the man with authority. He feels small. The badge, once his shield, now feels like a mirror reflecting back every choice he made to hide his own fear behind control. He looks down at the table. The two documents still lie there, one of honor, one of complaint. Two worlds divided by one man's perception. His hand trembles slightly as he folds the papers, as if trying to erase what they represent. But he can't. Then it happens, that single, defining moment of understanding. Not a loud confession, not a breakdown. Just a breath. A pause. A quiet surrender to truth. He sees it now, the difference between power and respect, between commanding obedience and earning honor. The man he mocked didn't defeat him with rank, or law, or punishment. He did it with dignity. Doyle exhales slowly, eyes fixed on the empty chair across from him. The silence feels heavier now, but it's not the weight of guilt, it's the weight of awakening. He stands, straightens his jacket, and for the first time, the gesture isn't about authority. It's about humility. That's the real turning point, not when one man loses control, but when another learns the value of restraint. Because true strength never needs to shout. It only needs to stand, quietly, and be seen. The courtroom feels lighter now, yet every step echoes as if the room itself is remembering what just happened. The spectators have left, whispers fading into the hallways, leaving only the hum of quiet reflection. Papers are shuffled, chairs moved, but nothing can erase the imprint of dignity that lingers in the air. Officer Doyle remains seated a while longer, staring at the table. His hands are folded loosely, no longer tapping, no longer fidgeting. There is no smirk, no laughter, only a shadow of comprehension settling across his features. Judge Hensley watches him with measured patience. She doesn't scold, she doesn't lecture. Her eyes convey what words cannot. Accountability has been established. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the quiet understanding that lingers after the facts are laid bare. The general is gone, but his presence still dominates the space. Captain Ruiz collects the remaining files and follows quietly. She casts a glance at the empty chair where Alyson had sat, a nod almost imperceptible, a silent acknowledgement that integrity does not seek recognition, only action. Doyle finally stands. His movements are slow, deliberate. He straightens his own uniform, but this time it feels like armor removed, not displayed. He glances at the judge. "I understand, Your Honor," he says quietly, the words stripped of bravado, stripped of excuses. There is weight in the admission, not a plea for mercy, but a first step toward humility. The judge inclines her head, satisfied with the acknowledgement. That is all this court requires. No applause, no dramatics, only the subtle shift in energy that comes when ego is confronted and accountability is embraced. Outside, sunlight falls on the courthouse steps, soft and unhurried. The world continues, indifferent yet subtly altered, as if time itself recognized the lesson learned inside those walls. For the general, the victory is silent. No headlines, no grand announcements. Only the knowledge that authority, wielded responsibly, has restored the balance between respect and power. And for Officer Doyle, the change begins quietly. The reflection in polished shoes, the weight of past arrogance. These are the tools now shaping understanding, not control. He walks down the hallway, slower, steadier. Every step carries a new awareness. The courthouse door closes behind him with a soft click. It is a punctuation mark, not an exclamation, but a period. The story has ended, but the lesson remains. True authority is earned through integrity, and respect is never demanded. It is always given when deserved. Some victories do not roar. They whisper. And sometimes, that is enough. True authority never shouts. It doesn't demand recognition. It moves quietly, like the tide reshaping a shore, leaving clarity in its wake. General Ellison didn't need to raise his voice, to strike fear, or to punish. His strength was in presence, in discipline, in unwavering dignity. The lesson wasn't delivered through confrontation alone, but through restraint, the subtle demonstration that respect is earned, not commanded. Officer Doyle laughed once, oblivious to the weight of his actions. That laughter has now faded, replaced by a quiet understanding. Power without integrity is hollow, and authority without empathy is nothing more than fear in uniform. The courtroom may empty, the spectators may leave, but the imprint of responsibility, the echo of respect, remains. One phone call, one moment of quiet courage, changed everything. And that is the measure of true leadership, not how loudly you assert it, but how calmly, consistently, and morally you embody it. Because real strength doesn't announce itself. It shows itself in the choices you make when no one is looking, and in the respect you leave behind.